Hey there berries, welcome to my support League of Legends patch 12.9 support tier list. If you aren't already subscribed, I know you're probably sick of YouTubers saying this, but there's a really big patch coming in 2 weeks time that you should be informed about, and I'll be doing a tier list for that and breaking it all down in terms of a support perspective in 2 weeks time. So do make sure you're subscribed and paying attention for when that comes out, because that might be pretty helpful for you. There's biggest patch probably in maybe about 6 or 7 years coming in two weeks time. Okay, so make sure you're ready for that. But for now, we've got some little changes, some little ones to ease our way into the bigger one. As you can see on the list, hopefully you can see in, but at the top there is a Braum and a Thresh buff. We've got a Renata nerf, and also it says champion adjustment for Pyke and Talia, which I'll talk about like marginally. But the Pyke champion adjustment, honestly, it's more of it's just a solid nerf as opposed to a champion adjustment. I'm not sure why they even used that wording. It's just a straight up nerf. But back to the buffs, let's talk about the positive things this patch so far. So the Braum is getting buffed. He has needed a buff for quite some time. So his passive cooldown on a target, so once they've already been stunned, the duration of like the cooldown for until they can get stacks on them again from the Braum passive has been reduced. So that's pretty welcome. So that means that the team fights that last a little bit longer, Braum will become more relevant, which you might want to take a mental note for that for the big patch coming in 2 weeks time, because the fight should be lasting a bit longer then as well. Thresh also receiving a buff. Soul will basically be giving Thresh a lot more, so he's getting extra armor and AP per soul by 0.25, which doesn't sound like a lot, but say in a game you collect maybe 60 souls, which is generally pretty easy. You know, you just add 25% on top of that, which off the top of my head is 15. So you're getting an extra 15 armor and AP ratio. The 15 armor probably being the main thing. So you're getting a lot of free gold extra in terms of stats just from the souls now. And on top of that, the lantern has been buffed quite considerably in terms of shield amount as well. So say if you are collecting 60 souls in a game, you should probably be able to get a bit higher than that. But say you only have 60, you're going to be providing an extra 60 shield on your lantern, which is potentially AoE as well. So it's like honestly, it's like a mini locket buff really for Thresh automatically. We'll talk about him more in a tier list specifically of why I've placed him where he is at the moment. But they are significant buffs, I would say mainly for high elo. So if you are Plat Plus, that Thresh buff makes Thresh looking quite interesting, especially as we move into the big patch in 2 weeks time. The first nerf we'll talk about, the one that they've actually labeled, is, you know, the Renata's nerf is her armor is going down by 2 base. And then her passive damage is probably the strangest thing of all to nerf a champion with. So they're nerfing her passive by quite a decent amount, from basically 3.5 at max rank to 2%, but they're adding more AP ratio on it. So if you've been copying my Zhonya's Imperial Mandate build, you might not notice too much of a difference on this. It kind of mitigates this nerf quite nicely, because we're still getting 1% extra on the passive via 100 AP. So if you're using my build, the Imperial Mandate Zhonya's build, you probably won't notice much difference here at all. Maybe at the start of laning phase, that -2 armor might make a bit of a difference, but on the whole, it's not really that bad at all. Now the really strange one is the Pyke one. So it actually says, I'm pretty sure, buffed in support focused ways, they say, but honestly, not really. The main thing that you need to be aware of is that they've taken your cut from Pyke, basically. From what I can understand, at least anyway. The patch notes are kind of messed up. So either way, Pyke is losing gold, or his teammates are losing gold in terms of his ult execute, which is a big deal. The whole point of Pyke is to snowball quite a lot, get kills early. Using your ult multiple times in a fight can really turn the situation into, you know, coming back into the game or just snowballing even harder. So them nerfing that is huge nerf. They're also nerfing the Q, they're increasing the mana cost of that level 1 by a decent amount. I believe it's plus 20. The one kind of buff for Pyke really is that he gets to have ever so slightly more regeneration off of his W. Sorry, off of his W, the passive that he has, the grey health bar, when near multiple enemies. So yeah, that's the only real buff that Pyke's got. I don't know why they're really justifying it as a support buff. I mean, okay, yes, but no. It's a really weird change. I mean, I know they've been trying to nerf Pyke lane mid for quite some time, but honestly, it was, I don't know, it was a really strange read. And yeah, I'll show you in a tier list where I think he is at the moment. One thing to note as well is Hull Breaker is receiving a slight nerf, and maybe in your games as well. At least, you know, if you've been watching the Unranked to Diamond series, we're going to be coming across, or have already been across, a lot of Cyan tops, both against and on my team. And this patch will hopefully reduce the amount of Cyans in games by quite a bit, because everyone wants to do inting Cyan, because no one actually wants to learn how to play the game properly. So big quality of life really in terms overall on that top lane kind of situation, not having to deal with Cyan as much, having to, you know, just thump down turrets down the entire time and going 0-12 and still being a nuisance. So just a thought I'd slide mention that for this patch. But going into the actual tier list itself, we are starting, I mean, I started up quite high here, we can scroll down a little bit. The general tier 5 champions that I don't want you to play are all down there. Maybe we can get a little bit of a zoom in on this. There we go. Moving up into the tier 3 and tier 4. So Brom and Thresh were tier 4. I've decided to move them up to tier 3. I still say that you'll get problems in terms of, particularly with the Thresh, if people clicking lanterns and things like that. But the buffs, I would say, overall are considerable enough to move them out of tier 4 into tier 3 into like a more viable situation. I would still say there's some circumstances in terms of the picks. I'd say the higher ELO you are, Thresh would be better to play. Wouldn't recommend an iron or bronze, or even really silver. Really, once you're moving into gold, then Thresh becomes a more interesting pickup, mainly because of the lantern clicking. Brom requires a auto attacker that hits lots in order to activate that passive, especially now that that passive has been reduced in cooldown. So you're looking at champions that are basically not like the caster AD carries. Like Jhin is the classic one where his auto attacks are super slow, so Jhin Brom would generally be pretty trolled to do. So you want to find those auto attackers that are going to be attacking a lot. Usually Brom Lucian is the best, because Lucian activates a second shot off his passive every time he uses a spell. So he is probably the exception in terms of like the spell casting rule. But any auto hitters that hit for a lot over a short period of time, pretty good. Like the Callista and Vayne and even kind of Cogmore can kind of work as well. You would generally want to run an enchanter with kind of like those hyper carries, but Brom, if you need a tank and you feel like you need a tank, can be really good, especially if you want to block those projectiles coming in, like an Ornn ultimate. He can basically delete the Ornn ult, Nami ult and things like that. So he has some like little cases where his wall can be pretty powerful in that regard. Pyke, I've moved down to tier 4. He was an okay pick in tier 3. I would say probably on the higher end of tier 3, but this change is just super stupid. They need to. And then you got the big patch that's going to be coming out in 2 weeks time, which basically makes a lot of every single champion in the game tankier. So Pyke is lost. He will need a little bit more of a buff help in order to help him become a bit more viable with support. They might honestly have to revert the ult change. I don't know what they were thinking with that change, honestly. But yeah, that ain't it. That is not it, unfortunately. So we are going to move up into tier 2. You probably already saw a glimpse of this earlier. Renata is still a solid pick in tier 2. I think my personal build with the Zhonya's and Imperial Mandate now looks, to me at least anyway, the strongest build that you can do. I know lots of people like doing like Guardian build and stuff like that, but my build that I've been doing has been working really nicely anyway, so no complaints there from me. I think it'd be just she hasn't changed in my eyes at all, really. This patch has done nothing to or against her. Nothing else really here. I mean, Brand as usual becomes super powerful if you are in the unranked to like silver territory, but he does fall off a little bit, but he is one to keep your eye on for next patch. Okay, that is that one could actually be potentially tier 1 going into next patch, but we need to wait for further confirmation on future patches and stuff. So if you are wanting to learn a champion, Brand is probably the one on the list right now. Okay, moving up to tier 1, the classic Uwu tier. We got 4 Uwus and a Uwu robot. Nothing really else to add here. If you've been watching this tier list for some quite time, you know that these champions are generally the best. Going into the big patch though, I'd say Sona's looking pretty kick-ass, honestly, for it. If fights are going to be lasting longer, then she will probably be the strongest. I know, like, basically leaking a little bit here for the next tier list. Once again, we need to confirm on numbers and stuff like that, but yeah, generally the fights that are lasting longer are generally the ones that are going to be nice. I think Soraka will benefit from it a lot. I think Nami might lose a little bit of power going into it, but I still think she's going to be either a solid tier 1 or a tier 2 pick. But generally all the champions there you wouldn't have to worry about too much, apart from maybe the Blitzcrank might drop slightly. We'll have to see about that, but I think the your friendly Uwus are generally fine at the moment and shouldn't see too much or if any risk going into the mega patch coming in 2 weeks time. So if you want to learn any of the champions in tier 1, I would highly recommend to do it. And then the Brand and the Renata should still be pretty good going into, you know, the big changes. After that, there might be a lot of mixing around that I'll have to sort out for the next patch. There's going to be a lot of things I'm going to need to think about. That one's going to be quite a difficult hurdle to try and predict going into it. But I hope the tier list helps you out. As I said, make sure you subscribe because the next tier list will probably change, if I'm honest. There are lots of item changes. There are a lot of circumstantial changes where if everyone is going to get base health increase and armor and magic resist per level, fights will be lasting longer. It could make potentially a lot of champions unviable, and a couple of champions might be broken in both good and a bad way. So I will try and make some of those predictions. I'll probably, the next tier list won't necessarily be perfect, but generally I'm pretty good with the predictions, so I highly recommend you check up on that, and hopefully I'll be able to put you on the right track going into the big patch. So I'm looking forward to it. Honestly, it's the biggest patch that Riot has done for quite some time in terms of changing up the meta. It's been pretty stale for quite a long time. All they really did add this season is they tried to add 2 dragons, and we've only got 1 dragon. So it's a welcome change that they've done in order to help freshen up the game. We'll just have to see if the tank numbers that they're throwing onto every single champion is going to be enough still to stop assassins killing you in 0.69 seconds. But yeah. See you next in 2 weeks time for another tier list. If you are interested in the support content, we do have an unranked to diamond series going on right now. Started it about a week and a half ago, I think, or a week ago, and that is basically me playing every single support in the solo queue to prove that even though we have a tier list here, all the supports can be played in order to climb in solo queue. It's meant to be more of an educational series, but a lot of people are getting a lot of entertainment value from it, and thank you for leaving all the kind comments if you have been on those videos. I've been enjoying making them, and I've been enjoying reading your comments as well. But yeah, all the best. I won't keep you going. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe on the Rift. Bye bye.